Security Council Resolution 1325, the international community took a bold first step. Austria is and has been a strong and early supporter of UN Security Council Resolution 1325. We have incorporated its objectives in national policies, as well as our development cooperation and humanitarian assistance policy. The support of local women is among our main goals in the National Action Plan on implementing UNSCR 1325. We are convinced that sustainable peace and security can only be achieved by ensuring women's and men's equal, full, and meaningful participation in the prevention, management, and resolution of conflict. We are glad that we found reliable partners in the global network of women Peacebuilders, as well as the Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund, who share this vision. In view of the upcoming open debate on women, peace, and security in the UN Security Council later this month, Austria had made pledges for the continued implementation of the Women, Peace, and Security agenda. These pledges relate above all to the enhanced support of UN Women, the provision of financial resources within the framework of the Austrian Development Cooperation, and the integration of the content of the WPS agenda in the training. We're very happy to be able to report that the vast majority of our pledges has been realized. A few of them had to be postponed due to the COVID-19 pandemic. And let me assure you, we will pursue our commitment beyond the anniversary year. While there has been progress on the implementation of the Women, Peace and Security agenda over the last 20 years, the reality of women and girls in countries affected by conflict and humanitarian crisis has hardly changed. The circumstances that hinder the full implementation were underscored in February 2020 during the Global Women's Forum for Peace and Humanitarian Action in Vienna. Austria had the great pleasure of co-hosting this event alongside the GNWP and the WPHF. During these 2 days in February, we could observe the dynamic power, experience, and knowledge of local women peacebuilders and humanitarian responders. They formulated the Vienna Declaration with concrete policy recommendations and calls to action to ensure the effective implementation of WPS ahead of the 20th anniversary and beyond. Back in February, the COVID-19 pandemic had not yet affected our lives to the same extent as it does today, but we believe that the key priorities defined in February are still valid. We've seen that this global crisis has exacerbated existing inequalities and threats of gender-based violence. We need to listen to the perspectives of women leaders on the ground and support the priorities of first responders who are already directly involved in COVID-19 response and prevention. This is the only way to ensure that this pandemic will not set us back on previous achievements and progress for women of all ages, but rather kick off a new reality where the voices are considered equal. As one noted expert wrote, if women are not perceived to be fully within the structures of power, surely it is power that we need to redefine rather than women. As far as I'm concerned, I already see the structures of power changing through the dedicated and exemplary work of the women sitting on the panel today, alongside all other women at the front lines of humanitarian crisis and conflict. Austria is committed to maintain its support for grassroots and women-led organizations in the future to see the Women, Peace and Security agenda implemented in full. I hope many fellow member states, the UN, and other key actors agree. And I'm hopeful as to what lies ahead. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Desiree, also for pointing out the negative impact of the crisis on already existing inequalities and the need for the donor community to really stay engaged and to contribute towards a gender-responsive recovery. Without any further ado, I would like to hand over now to Mavic Cabrera Balesa, the Chief Executive Officer of the Global Network of Women Peacebuilders. Mavic, could you please present and provide us with a more detailed information on the outcomes and the content of the declaration?
Thank you very much, Christina. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from Manila, everyone. I and the members of the Global Network of Women Peacebuilders team, Joint Director General Desiree Schweitzer, and colleagues from the Austrian Development Corporation, Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund, in welcoming and thanking you all. As already mentioned by Director General Schweizer, from February 19 to 20, women from 17 countries, including more than 70 local women peacebuilders and humanitarian responders, convened in Vienna, Austria to discuss their work, achievements, and the persistent challenges they face in implementing the Security Council Resolution 1325 and the Supporting Women Peace and Security Resolutions, as well as in humanitarian action. They produced the Vienna Declaration, the outcome document of the Global Women's Forum for Peace and Humanitarian Action, which addresses these key issues. Risks and threats to their lives amidst the violent conflict, and these risks and threats extend to their families and everyone else close to them. The lack of recognition for their diversity as women, as LGBTQI individuals, as youth, as people from different ethnic groups, racial and cultural identities, different abilities, and socioeconomic backgrounds. Another key issue is underfunding. The work of local women peacebuilders and grassroots humanitarian responders remains very much underfunded, and this has been highlighted even more during this pandemic. The non-recognition of local women's expertise and exclusion from most peace processes and political decision-making, particularly at high level and formal levels, despite evidence that women's participation makes such processes more effective, more inclusive, and more sustainable, is a key issue. And such exclusion also takes place in humanitarian programs. Local women are excluded from decision-making, including in the design and implementation of humanitarian response. As a result, the needs of women and young women refugees, internally displaced, and host communities remain unheard and unaddressed. Local women do not have access to economic resources and opportunities. Again, another key issue that is underscored even more during this health crisis. Often, they cannot own land, inherit properties, travel safely, or make financial decisions. Underpinning all of these problems are patriarchy, negative stereotypes, discriminatory social practices, and institutional barriers, as well as policies. These problems seem overwhelming and daunting. But the good news is there are doable and practical solutions. Local women are here to speak to us about them. Thank you, and good morning to all of you. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you.
Thank you, Mavic, for providing us with an overview on the main messages and recommendations of this impressive group of women to a diverse group of stakeholders. In fact, they are relevant for member state representatives, the multilateral system, and civil society, and all of them are represented here today. I would now like to welcome and introduce to you our estimated panelists, all of them from conflict-affected countries, and all of them have contributed to the development of these recommendations. In order to make best use of the time, we will have 2 rounds of questions, all 3 of them, before we provide all of you with the opportunity to raise questions and provide your comments. I would therefore like to remind all of you to keep your microphone on mute and invite you to post your questions in the chat box. Our colleagues will be collecting these questions for the Q&A part after hearing from our panelists. So let me start with introducing Julia Karashvili from the IDP Women's Association Consent in Georgia. After the war in Abkhazia in the early 90s and displacement, Julia, together with colleagues, created the NGO to support internally displaced women. Over the next 2 decades, Julia has gained wide experiences working with the UN, NATO, the Georgian Ministry of IDPs, and other organizations. She has coordinated many projects for conflict-affected women and IDPs and actively participates in the development of National Action Plan for Women, Peace and Security. Here, Julia was awarded by Wörthner von Suttner Peace Award. Congratulations and welcome, Julia. And I would like to ask you to please share with us your experiences on how are women peace builders, including IDP and refugee women in Georgia, adapting to the COVID-19 pandemic. How are they contributing to an effective response and recovery? I hand over to you, Julia.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, good morning, good day to everybody. I need to ask excuse that I will be emotional because I am emotional because I saw this video which brought me back to this wonderful forum, which was the last such event before COVID started its terrible pandemic. And I am emotional because in my small South Caucasus, we again have war. And regardless of all efforts of women who were for a long time warning about coming escalation, their words were not heard, and the war again broke, and now we need to deal with all these consequences again. So I will try to be very short and to say Georgia is a small country located in South Caucasus with 3.7 million population, and more than 7% of this population are displaced. As in all displaced communities, the majority are women. And women who live in protected displacement, which means they are more than 20 years living in conditions where the main actions from government, yes, very serious, are on housing, but not in real inclusion and not on giving a real voice, both in international negotiations and in meaningful participation in creation of further plans, what we all together try to set up. And recently, already during COVID, with support from Global Network and from ADA, we made survey of attitude and of understanding, and women were demanding more participation and more actions. Because when we started to deal with COVID, the first who answered on this COVID were women from communities. These women to whom one day we gave sewing machines, and they immediately start to prepare face masks and distributed free of charge to people. Because COVID was not only a threat, like physical threat and virological threat, but also psychological threat. And people who were getting this mask felt more protected because they had something in their hands. Our organization was one of the first who started disinfection of IDP centers, answering of appeal from understanding committee about special protection of IDP camps. And we needed to remind government that IDP in situation of COVID needs special protection, and special here because they are living in compact settlements and because there are more problems related with this. We have some opportunities in Georgia because we have national action plan, already the third action plan. And we hope that government will include women, and we work on this to include this grassroots women in action plan, which will be prepared now for the fourth stage of implementation. But we still have lack of inclusion of women in comprehensive peace process, in Geneva discussions, what we always try to do. What we are trying to do together with women is to raise the resilience of communities, because we think that women are key now to teach other people about rules. We start to work in schools, to prepare schools to normal study process, because we still have work in classrooms. And women are key because teachers are women, because medical doctors and nurses are women, and because main caring parents are women. So we work with this woman that through women we will teach school children how to not to become sick and not to make that school will be closed. We teach women, and they are working very actively with municipalities. In 2017, together with GNV, a global network, we started localization program, which later with UN Women, we implemented in 10 municipalities, and we have active joint working groups, which are dealing now what can be done and how people can be prepared for second wave and for situation which we have now. We have Leaders Academy when we teach women, and now we teach them online, all things which it's necessary to know, how to deal with local authorities, what is communication, what is negotiation and mediation skills, what is EU agreement, and other things. We teach them cybersecurity, and with support from UN Women, we created network of grassroots women from all conflict-affected villages and from IDP centers. And we think that these women know better what to do and how to do. Through these women, we were helping to distribute hygienic means. And it was first what women were demanding. They were saying we need to have real protection. And women in grassroots organizations were distributing these hygienic means, and they were teaching other women how they need to save their families. Information about preventive roles, posters. Unfortunately, I could not show all these pictures. We have mobile medical team, which is going to IDP collective centers and to remote villages where live conflict-affected people, helping to elderly who are isolated and distributing medicines, because medicines are extremely expensive and the price is rising again and again. We think that what is key now is to include women in preparation of new action plan. For this, we are in constant relation with a special advisor to Prime Minister on gender equality and human rights. And we hope that this network of women, which are created and which work now in all conflict affected areas, will be asked. We organize consultations, and we hope with support from a global network and in framework of other projects to make civil forum when women will express what they need and what they can do, because they have huge resources. It's their huge resources. It's education that they have in their hands, and it's the really willingness to be included as peace builders. I will stop to give place for my colleagues. Thank you very much for this opportunity to be here and to talk. And thank you for Ada for supporting this very serious project.
Thank you very much, Julia, and thanks for trying to keep with the time. And thanks for sharing these achievements and the quick reaction to improve the immediate impacts with and for women on the ground through the diverse actions and activities you managed to organize. I would now like to move from Georgia to Palestine, and would like to introduce you to Amal Tarasi from the Young Women's Christian Association from Palestine. Amal has extensive experience of more than 15 years working with international non-governmental organizations in Palestine. She has assumed managerial and technical positions for a variety of projects and successfully delivered positive outcomes, including various economic development initiatives. Amal, may I ask you, how are women peace builders adapting to the COVID-19 pandemic? Could you please provide us with some examples?
Thank you everybody. I was really happy to join the conference last February, and having to see this video again, the memories came again about that important event that we contributed in. As we celebrate the 20th anniversary of UN Resolution 1325, it's very critical for us to recognize the roles of women, particularly at the local community. Today, I will let you know how the fund by the WPHF helped us to address the women needs at the local communities in Hebron area in Palestine. By this pandemic, women in Palestine suffered a lot. Palestine actually is a small Arab country located in the Middle East with 5 million population, 49% of female, 80% living in urban areas. Palestine is occupied since 1948 by the Israeli occupation. West Bank and Gaza have been living under Israeli military occupation since 1967. We people in Palestine has been depriving from having control over their everyday life, even on their future. The occupation has caused the economic situation in Palestine to be very bad. We have high unemployment rate for women, for youth, for young women particularly, with high poverty rate. Actually, the COVID-19 made things worse. By this global crisis, the economic situation has deteriorated more. We have high level of poverty rate. The levels of domestic violence against women has also increased. And then because of that, we thought how we can enhance the role of women to participate towards solving this. The Palestinian women, every Palestinian knows that they have the power, they can adapt to this hard situation. And by this, YWCA Palestine, which I'll give you some brief about it now, work to adapt the activities and to enhance the role of women at the local communities, to support towards supporting their families, to supporting their children against this crisis, especially in the economic and enhancing their economic resilience, but also help them to have better life, to be able to reduce the violence against them. While WCA envisions actually free and democratic society where women and youth are empowered to exercise and protect their political, economic, and social rights. We at YWCA Palestine, and under the umbrella of 1325, we had a conference in the year 2014 under the title Freedom, Peace, Dignity for Women. And after that, a formulation of feminist coalition to implement 1335 was formed. And now there's a national coalition managed by the Ministry of Women Affairs is being there in Palestine, where the strategic plans are developed and all of the NGOs working towards that. Under the support of WPHF, we have implemented the project which increase economic resilience and participation of women in Hebron area. Were we happy at YWCA Palestine to prepare a brief video? I would like to highlight that women from the communities are very grateful that they got the fund. They addressed their needs. This was under 1325. They were able to participate in their decisions, to be able to find ways to go beyond the borders. Some of them lost their job, their husband lost their jobs. They have bad economic situation. So they went into rehabilitation, some workshops to work there to have some income. Others have some formed safe spaces at the areas so they can support each other. They have better psychological support, better socioeconomic condition at the area. They can't access the health system, so they rehabilitated a local clinic at their communities. And more, we have more initiatives that responded to this COVID in Palestine. And I would be happy to show this quick video for you,
Great.
so you can see more about this. Thank you very much.
قعدنا قبل فترة مع اللي هي جمعية الفنية في مخيم العروب، مجموعة من الصبايا اللي بتتراوح أعمارهم بين 18 ل 29 سنة، من أجل النهوض بواقع المخيم، واقع الشباك بشكل خاص. طلعنا في مشروع إنه نعيد تأهيل مجموعة من ماكينات الخياطة في مخيم العروب، وتمكين مجموعة من السيدات كان عددهم 15 بالاتفاق مع جمعية الفنية وجمعية الشابات المسيحية. عملنا على إعادة صيانة هاي الأجهزة، قمنا بتدريب 15 سيدة من مخيم العروب، قاموا بتصميم زي للدكة.
ضمن جائحة كورونا بعد الاجتماع طرحنا فكرة تصليح عيادة عربية اللي نفتح مجال أكبر للسيدات إنهم يتوفروا في هاي العيادة. فبالتعاون مع جمعية الشابات المسيحية والحمد لله رب العالمين تم إصلاح العيادة من مظليات، من بلاط، من تجهيز الساحة. تعاقدنا مع جمعية الشابات المسيحية لمدة سنتين، فهذا العقد أعطانا كمان فرصة أول شيء لتعزيز دور السيدات، عندنا تمكينهن اقتصاديا وتعزيز دورهن وثقتهن بأنفسهن إنه يقدرن يعطي رأيهن، يقدمن ما في عندهن، يشتغلن كمان صح.
Thank you very very much, Amal, and thank you for sharing very concrete examples of initiatives of you and your partner organizations contributing to economic empowerment, also addressing social, psychological, and health issues in this really difficult environment, and for sharing another very inspiring video. I think your input also highlights the urgent need to strengthen the nexus between humanitarian response, development, and peace. So thanks again. And last but not least, I'm very glad to introduce to you Mercy Sherab from Kenya. Mercy is the Executive Director of the Rural Women Peace Link in the North Rift region of Kenya. She is an educationist with experience working with women and girls in conflict-affected areas and has been a champion for access to education, inclusion of women and young women in decision-making, peace building, and leadership. Mercy, I ask you directly, what do you think are the greatest contributions of young women to the implementation of the Women Peace Security Agenda and humanitarian action, including in the COVID-19 response? And over to you, please.
Thank you so much. I'll be sharing briefly on the contributions of women and young women to the implementation of women, peace and security and humanitarian action. And the first I would want to point out is the fact that international organizations have been able to provide resources to support our work. And by resources, I mean financial and technical, and also in terms of networking, because we find that after working with a partner and getting to build your capacity, we've been able to get support from other like-minded organizations to support our work. And example in Kenya, localizing the Kenya National Action Plan on Women, Peace and Security. And women and youth-led organizations in Kenya, they've been actively involved in development of the second Kenya National Action Plan that was launched 4 months ago in Kenya. And these organizations were in the forefront because of the capacities and the resources they have from local and international partners and organizations. And again, in Kenya, we do not have a national action plan on the implementation of 2250. So what we did as we developed our NAP on 1325 is acknowledging the fact that women are diverse, and we have young women, we have the gender non-conforming, and we have old women. And so we acknowledge the fact that we need to have our NAP recognizing this diversity. Then we've had women who have been in peace building for a long time, and we've had opportunities to work with these women and giving us platforms to take part in leadership, like the organization I work for, providing opportunities for young women to take up leadership by building the capacity and through mentorship as well. And as a result, the same young women have been able to provide mentorship and supporting empowerment initiatives for teens. So we are passing on the skill that we get from women who have been in peace building and humanitarian action. As a result of the support we got and the capacity as well, we've been able to create awareness on the presence of 1325, and we've used it as an advocacy tool for policy implementation in Kenya to ensure issues of peace and women, peace and security are a priority. And as we do awareness creation, we target slums where we have so many young women and young men. And in most cases, young women face conflict-related sexual violence when we have conflict. So we've done awareness creation, and we also do with young women do campaigns through social media using different platforms to advocate for encouraging women participation in leadership, and again just to inform policies on reproductive health. Right now, when we had COVID and we could not easily do physical meetings, we make use of Facebook, Twitter, and even FM radios to give information on COVID and calling on policy policy makers on what we want done as young women. And with the support we got from our development partners, we've been able to, during this COVID-19 period, we've been able to collect data from the community. And for this, we make use of grassroots women networks. And for us, we did a refresher training for these women so that they get to know, to understand the emerging trends of conflict. Like COVID-19 it was something new for all of us, a challenge we never anticipated. So we brought these women together and created platforms like WhatsApp groups so that we have communications ongoing. And for them, they share information on what is going on for response by relevant stakeholders, and just using innovative ways like virtual meetings and even writing letters to respective stakeholders. Like in the counties in Kenya, we have COVID-19 response team, but we realized they did not apply agenda and peace lens as they designed their responses. So we came up with advisory so that we have issues of peace and COVID-19 factored in as they designed responses. So what and the main contribution and what has made us going during this period is collecting data and information so that as we do advisories to stakeholders, we have data on segregated data on young women and issues of gender-based violence that were in the rise across Kenya generally. And again, for those, because we've been engaging rural women and most of them do not have access to technology, we decided to follow the Ministry of Health regulations and have like a minimum number of 10 working with these women to teach them on how they can still go on with their work and making sure they're safe. And again, the communities they work with are safe. And for us to continue with our work, we were able to get support from the Ministry of Interior through the county commissioner based at the county levels to give us permission to go on with our work, and also to enable us give feedback to the advisories after we do data collection and surveys in the community on the impact of COVID-19. With support from Global Network, we were able to support again women and child-headed families with dignity kits. And for this, we had in mind priorities like sanitary pads that right now, when most women who work in informal settlement lost their jobs and income, it's not a priority. And this was forcing girls to get into sex for money. And that's a violation. And in the process, they fall pregnant. And right now, as schools reopen in Kenya, the organization and a group of organizations advised the government to come up with innovative ways to ensure these girls are catered for, because they are mothers and they're still teenage mothers. So that they're able to provide for psychosocial support in schools, and as well ensuring they're in a safe environment and can still go on with their studies despite the situation. Yeah,
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Perfect. I think you provided great examples, and among others, the one that you managed to integrate the intersectionality and the diversity of women in your national action plan, but also the importance of media and social media to share information around COVID-19 related issues for a better response, among others. I could continue. But I'm now coming to my second round of questions, and considering the realities you have presented from the ground, I would like to ask all of you one question, which might be a challenging one to answer. And coming back to the declaration where you have participated in the Vienna Forum, from your perspective, if you had to pick one recommendation from the Vienna Declaration, which one would it be and why? And I would like to start with Julia again, please. Julia, are you there? Can you?
Yes. Yes. Coming from
Thank you very much, and really great presentations. And coming from what I was saying during my presentation and taking into account that we are working mainly on women who are affected by conflict, internally displaced, women in protracted displacement, and women living alongside the former administrative borderline, which also are affected by conflict. For me, it's very important recommendations which are about IDP women. It's one of recommendation is to meaningfully include women refugee, IDPs, and women from host communities at all stages of design, implementation, and monitoring of humanitarian programs which contribute to social cohesion between communities, and to ensure that they are represented in all coordination and leadership mechanisms in crisis context. In today's situation, this recommendation is very relevant, especially taking into account, again, war between Armenia and Azerbaijan over Nagorno-Karabakh. As we see, our region is one region, and if all these countries are participating in this project, we think that special attention to IDP, refugee, and conflict-affected women now are very important. And I will add that recommendation about underfunded project of women also is very realistic, especially for IDP and conflict-affected women. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Julia, and it comes a little bit back to the need to implement the gender-responsive nexus approach and integrate all stages of these programs, IDP women. I would like to move to Palestine again. Amal, is there a specific recommendation from the declaration that you think is most important for your work?
Actually, first, all recommendations are relevant and required for all women. But if I would select, I would link it with my intervention earlier, which is a recommendation related to supporting women, including young women, right and access to education, economic resources, and opportunities. Because if women are economically empowered and are financially independent, they can more effectively contribute in the decision-making process and the peace building and to sustain peace and human rights and gender equality. I can say that the critical aspect of reaching gender equality is women empowerment, either in the decision-making in the public and private spaces, or in having an access to resources and opportunities. This will definitely lead us to a peace and security. We do believe that in order to change the life of women, to reduce the violence against women, women should be economically empowered because they will have an access to resources, they will have control over the resources, they will have the ability to say, to have a say at their houses, at their public spaces. If I can say YWCA, we focus on economic empowerment. We have vocational training centers, we work with the cooperatives, but now we are announcing new initiatives which is linked to COVID. It's e-jobs. We think that fresh graduates from the young women who are very well educated in Palestine, they are intelligent, they should have an ability to access to e-commerce, e-marketing. That we should rely on the international economy in order to be able to maintain, because the Palestinian economy is very weak. And if we need to find resources internally, we couldn't find it. So the IT, the COVID leads us to this digital transformation, which we can access all over the world. And now we announce and managed to get few fund on that to establish a platform that enable the young women to have this tool of self-employment. So their capacities are built and they are mentored in e-commerce and digital marketing. They can market their services, they can explore their ideas and their skills, so they have an income. So I hope they will be able to continue in this sustainable projects, will be in our next strategic plan for the coming 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Amal. And I think I would very much agree on the need for economic empowerment to be key for implementation of women's security agenda, for the realization of the participation aspects, but also for realization better protection of women. So although this was only one aspect, but thank you very much for this key message. Mercy, now it's your turn. Please, could you let us know which recommendation you would choose if you had to choose one? Mercy, over to you.
Thank you so much once again. For us, we picked a recommendation from the Vienna Declaration, the need to promote portrayal of women as peace builders by the media and decision makers, and supporting women's access to decision-making platforms, even in media organizations. And from experience, we've seen media it seems biased, and it means we like peace building is not news. So we have a lot of work done by women in the grassroots, and sometimes because of the terrains and geographical challenges, they cannot, their stories are not told, and we do, and this means we do not have an opportunity to listen to how these local and grassroots women work in issues of women, peace and security and humanitarian action. And again, this visibility of women in peace building, it means amplifying efforts of women in peace building, and this means attracting even resources to continue their work in different parts of the world. And documentation, the media can play a more active role through responsible coverage, and for this is to influence a policy and action, because you find that what the media reports is based on facts and data. And I'll give a case in Kenya where we were engaging universities on sexual harassment and sex for grades in universities. So we had a documentation with the media, and this was aired, and this made the university council to go back seat and come up with a gender policy to address such issues. And again, I'll give another case of conflict in one county in Kenya where it was a closed zone because of conflict, and what women did, because in Kenya women are perceived to be harmless, so they were given permission to go into a closed zone, and working with the media, they were able to air stories of the real, giving the real situation in the ground, that women were being abused sexually, they were being raped even by the military men, and that's how the women from that particular region got support. So I'll say documentation and working with media to promote visibility and provide evidence-based data. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mercy. I think you really successfully raised our attention on the importance of involving media as a tool to promote the leadership of women and young women, but also to improve protection. And I think even as important to change existing stereotypes that reduce women as victims of their circumstances, rather than supporting them in the active roles they play, in fact, in their contribution to recovery and peace at the very local level we are looking at now. I would like to thank you all very much for sharing your perspectives, your panelists, and I'm sure that our audience will have comments and questions. But while we organize a little bit the questions, I would like to kick off the discussions by asking Amasana Darisore, sorry if I spell your name wrong, the Senior Gender Advisor of the OECD, of the OSZE, to provide us with your comments and the short input, and thank you for being with us. Masana? Masana?
Yes, it was technical to unmute. Okay, thank you so much, Christina, for allowing me to participate in this. So as I said, I work for the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, the world's largest regional security organization with 57 participating states. And some of your participants, you are also members, and I personally know some of you, as we have been working and meeting in our different forums and on peace. But I'm very glad to share with you some of the work which we have made in OSCE lately, and what we are focusing on going forward. The OSCE has commitments to women, peace and security agenda in a number of ministerial council decisions. For instance, back in 2004, the action plan for the promotion of gender equality, which emphasized the promotion of the role of women in conflict prevention, crisis management, post-conflict, and explicitly noting the support for the Security Council resolution. And then the priority, it's important to note that the organization assists the participating states in developing programs and projects which aim to bring the equal opportunities for women to participate in efforts for peace and security, including those conducted at grassroots and regional levels. And we have also a couple of other dedicated ministerial decisions, such as on women in conflict prevention, crisis management, post-conflict rehabilitation, and also on ministerial council decision on elements of the conflict cycle, which also urges the same thing. So being the world's largest regional security organization, we carry out our mandate at various levels in various contexts and in accordance with these commitments. For example, our field operations and institutions are supporting participating states in developing and implementing national action plans on women, peace and security, which we try also to make it as effective policy tools as possible. And we have done also assessments of them back in 2014, and more recently, together with London School of Economics, another assessment was made back in 2020, where we focused and analyzed on the implementation of these national action plans. We also support our decision makers to meet with civil society representatives, and we urge them to develop those national action plans together, so to provide an inclusive process. So we offering these workshops and capacity building trainings for participating states, for stakeholders to design and improve those action plans. So another area which I want to briefly mention is that we also try to include the more women in mediation with slow progress. So we have developed a mediation toolkit together with our colleagues in the Conflict Prevention Center. And then this which provides a guidance to participating states, also to the special representative of the OSCE chairpersonship and to executive structures on how to include women in peace processes. Because we know there are lots of commitments, but then they are not realized in life. So we did a mapping of existing OSCE-supported formal negotiation processes back in 2019, and we found a very disturbing figure that between 1992 to 2017, only 1 out of 52 OSCE mediators has been a woman. So, and then in late 2019, a second woman was, for the second time, a woman was appointed to the position of special representative of OSCE chairperson in office in Ukraine and in the trilateral contact group. So that's a small progress. And there are still very few women in the support teams of mediators or in leading positions in the negotiation teams. So another challenge is of course, we identified is the lack of systematic interlinkages between the formal negotiation processes and the informal peace initiatives, which are often led by women from civil society organizations. And the third prevailing challenge is a lack of gender analysis and gender perspective in the negotiations themselves. So the national action plans offer insights on how our participating states plan to advance women's participation in conflict resolution and peace building, in each tailored to their national context. So we saw that now currently out of 39 NAPs in our OSCE region, on 2/3 set women's participation in peace process and mediation efforts as a goal. So I want to mention that plans include a general commitment on female representation, but it's only Switzerland and Norway have made the women's inclusion in mediation a priority area in their NAPs and set out concrete targets and measures to be taken. And I want to mention also Georgia, when Yulia Harashvili spoke, that Georgia's NAP includes clear minimum target for women's participation in Georgia's negotiation team in the Geneva International Discussions, 40%. And the incident prevention and response mechanism meetings, 35%. So that's been established since 2000, and it's important to monitor how these are implemented. Another good progress is that in recent years, women mediator networks have emerged in several sub-regions, and there are at least 5 networks involving women from our participating states that are active. But these networks are very important as they can contribute to increase women's participation in peace mediation efforts. However, all of them are relatively new and have so far focused on building internal structures and capacities. And most women who are involved in peace dialogues and more widely in peace building.
Yeah, thank you. 1 minute, please.
Okay, so just finish that.
Yes,
are
please,
committed. So we will support the women in civil society and community level initiatives to further support this process, which is much needed. And thank you so much.
Christina, you're muted.
Thank you very much, Amazana, for highlighting the role of the OSZE in the support to states and civil society, and also to improve women's involvement in media efforts. I've had the pleasure myself to participate in a workshop on how to develop better impact-related objectives for national action plans, which I found was a really interesting learning experience. So yeah, thank you very much. It was very comprehensive. And I would now like to open the floor for questions. And have to say, as you're aware, we have a big number of participants, so we have tried to collect the questions in the chat. And I would like to start with the first question coming from participants in Iraq and South Sudan to all our panelists. So the question would be how to ensure that women are protected both during conflict and after. Women often face sexual violence and attacks on their human rights, even after the guns fall silent. Do you have any concrete recommendations or good practices on addressing that? So I will start with Julia and keep our order, but would also like to ask you to try to be very concise because we have a few other questions and another 20 minutes left to get them clarified. So Julia, please could you come back to this question if possible? Yeah, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Is it okay for you to answer this question?
If you can repeat the question, because it's from Sudan. Because it's not
the question. Sorry, the question was how to ensure that women are protected both during conflict and after.
Okay. Thank you. This is an issue on which still global study was trying to present recommendation. It was the third recommendation concerning women peace builders and their security, because especially now when we have open phase, it's clear that women are under twofold fire, and then for their peace building activities they will be targeted not only in our communities but also in their communities. So it's really a question. And recommendation was that as there are special programs for human rights defenders, similar programs, it's EU which has such program for human rights defenders. And for instance, now in some countries, there are special camps on special shelters for human rights defenders from our countries, that it is necessary to have special program for women peace builders, especially grassroots women, which they will be taken in safe shelter, or that it should be organized special international campaign to protect their, like, persons who can be targeted. They should be included in human rights defenders protection. And especially it should concern people from grassroots, because famous peace activists, they have international protection. But when we talk about women in conflict and post-conflict situation in communities, they have some specific danger and threats which need to be addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Julia. I go directly to Amal, please.
Thank you. This is a heavy question, actually, because, as we said before and after COVID, protecting women is a moving target. It's not easy because there are many challenges that face women. But I think one of the best ways is to amplify the voices of women. The voices of women should be heard, and so their needs are highly addressed. They can then protect themselves because women are strong and they have their very good spirit. They have this unique spirit too, if their voices have been amplified, if they were enabled to advocate for their rights. One of the ways to protect women internally is the legal advocacy, to be more aware about the legal issues and to put the laws into effect. This should, as I said, goes hand in hand by giving them an access to resources and to be economically empowered. Then women can find the way to protect themselves. So we should give them the hands and to give them the means, to give them safe spaces, to provide them with the proper resources, to amplify their voices so they can be protected. This is before or after COVID or any other day, especially with the areas under conflict, similar to Palestine.
Thank you very much, Amal. Thank you. Mercy, would you have something to contribute as well? Do you hear me? Did you get the question?
Yes, I did, and I'd say how we can protect women during and after conflict is about like what the speakers who came first said. It's about them having knowledge on how they can ask and demand for their rights. And for instance, in conflict-related sexual violence, what we've done is creating awareness on legal procedures and making them know that we have a right to be protected and how they can go about it in cases of such occurrences during conflict. And again, networking so that if they're not in a position to do it themselves, they're linked to maybe women groups of women networks that can easily relay the information for action by the relevant stakeholders. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mercy. I think we will organize the next questions in a way that you can choose among a few questions I will put on the floor right now. And I would also give the other participants to the possibility to raise their hands if they want. So I will read out I will read out the 3 questions before I hand over to Mavic, also who has indicated to speak. So for the next 3 questions, there is one coming from Liberia. How can rural women in particular be included in decision-making and response to COVID-19? Do you have any specific strategies of good practices? So that would be one question. Another one is, again, what is the greatest challenge young women face in promoting the women, peace and security agenda? And then a third one would be, do you have any lessons learned on how to incorporate humanitarian action into women, peace and security policies, and how to advocate for women in the human response to be acknowledged as peace builders? So I would like to leave it with these 3 questions for the moment and would like to ask the panelists if they want to provide an answer to one of these questions. And again, being very concise, and I'm sorry to put pressure, but just to make best use of the time for other questions. So I start with Julia. Do you want to provide an input to any of these questions?
They always are very deep, and I will choose question about threats for rural women and resources and opportunities for rural women, because in our case, COVID in first really affected rural women, and we needed some special measures to support them so that they can participate in production, continue their agricultural activities, which we saw as very important. And one of serious threats which we saw for rural women and for women from grassroots was cyber violence. So first of all, women had no access to internet, which we found from our service. And the second, who had access, they often were victims of cyber crime or cyber violence. So we started to work on this, and we think that access to cyber networks and access to cyber security is crucial, because women should be protected, especially it comes to young women. They should have access, and it's necessary to organize some kind of access. We were trying for members of network to provide free internet, because it's very important for them. And the second thing, which is really necessary to see on stock of fertilizers, seeds, and all other things which need to be provided for women, that they can continue cycle of agricultural activities and to ensure their families for winter. We thought that it's also a very important part of our activities. I will leave our questions to colleagues.
Thank you very much. Any question for you, Amal, which you would like to answer? Amal, are you still there?
I would like to answer the question related to the good practices to participate, that enable the women to participate in decision making. Actually, we have at YWCA Palestine a feminist consultation strategy, and we also apply Rise Up module, which is one of the best practices to help the women to build their knowledge, experience, and characters, so they are able to participate in decision making. Actually, we select a cohort, young women. Those women will be trained on leadership practices. They will be equipped with the knowledge about UN resolutions 1325, 2250, and also with communication leadership skills. They are selected in partnership with the local communities and the local authorities at the areas. So we work now at the local level. These women transfer their knowledge to other women at the communities and work on initiatives and advocacy campaigns. So they are given the resources and the support to be able to participate in the decision making. They are linked also at the national level with the platforms and coalitions working with the women, like 1325 Coalition, VOW Coalition, Violence Against Women Coalition. So they are able to present the women voices and to have a say. They are linked to the government, and again, they are linked with the international platforms. So we are working at the local level, which is micro level, meso level, and then micro level with the international platforms. And that's module that we are adapting all over the world with YWCA worldwide, are gave proofs that we are able to help the women, to give them, be able to be agents for change. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It sounds like a very effective strategy. Yes, Mercy, any of the questions you would like to come into and provide an answer? Mercy, are you there?
Yes, I'm still on the call. I'd like to respond to the challenges that young women face in participation in women, peace and security. And I'll use my own example. Like a few weeks ago, we were in a training for young women mediators. And when I had an opportunity to talk about 1325, they didn't know, like 80% of them, apart from the trainers, didn't know what that UN 1325 is. So I'll say the biggest challenge is still lack of information and capacity to participate, and information comes with networks, so that when you have networks and information, we can easily get into these spaces and participate. And in terms of capacity, it's not only about knowledge, but technical, financial and technical support as well. And in areas where we still have patriarchal culture, women, and particularly young women, face two challenges, two main ones. And one is because of their age. They're young women, and sometimes the community feels they have nothing to offer. And again, for being women have been facing discrimination because of socialization and how we've been raised. And lastly, I would say lack of mentorship. Personally, I've been through a mentorship program, and the organization I'm engaged with currently is giving opportunities for young women. And as we do implement programs around women, peace and security. So when we have women in decision making and and leadership, it means they can participate, they can give input and representing even the voices of young women. So an example of Rural Women Peace Link, I, as the executive director, I'm under 30 years, but in our work, we work with older women who have been, we work with rural women, and for us, we get mentorship from women who have been in peace building. So the biggest challenge as well that hinder the effective participation is lack of mentorship. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very important points. I would now like to hand over to Mavic, who wants to take the floor, please. Mavic.
Thank you so much, Christina. I would like to respond to 2 points. The first one being the question on incorporating humanitarian action into women, peace and security policies. But I also would like to say vice versa, bringing women, peace and security perspectives into humanitarian action. So I wouldn't call it a lesson learned yet, or a best practice yet, but a promising practice. For example, the work that we're doing in Cox's Bazar, Bangladesh, between the host communities and Rohingya communities, Rohingya refugee camps, is to encourage the gender and humanitarian cluster, wherein GNWP is a part of, to regularly involve local women peace builders or local women leaders from the host communities, and if possible, right now it's not, from the Rohingya camps, so that their perspectives are integrated in the humanitarian response. And we're doing that very, very gradually. And our advocacy to the international humanitarian organizations is to ensure that this becomes a practice, because often the humanitarian actors are expat international workers, and they need to pass on that skills with local communities, as well as refugees and IDPs. And very quickly on the question on protection, I would like to go back there. There are many local protection mechanisms that have proven to be effective. For example, in Afghanistan, our local partners, such as the Afghan Women Welfare Development Association, have a network of tribal leaders. When they go to local areas and they communicate, they cooperate with the tribal leaders, because the tribal leaders know the movement of the Taliban, know when the Talibans are coming to the area, when they are leaving. So they are able to give them those tips, and they are able to protect them. And then there are also networks of early warning to warn the local women peace builders and humanitarian actors. And there are also networks who provide safe houses and urgent relocation if needed. These are not known, of course, and so and because of that, they also don't have resources. So our appeal to to the donor community is to allocate a certain percentage in project funds for such urgent response. So a core funding within even only a small percentage of core funding out of the total project funds. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mavic. This is very clear and specific. I would now like to give Ruyombia the floor. I hope I spelled the name clearly so you know who you mean. Can you take the floor, please? So you need to unmute. Yeah.
Thanks very much for the opportunity. Remember, I have 2 questions I would love to raise, and partly some of them I'm going to raise them as a man now. One of them is, I'm looking at, if we are talking about empowerment of and engagement of grassroots women to engage in these women empowerment programs, then we need to look at small organizations. Can you hear me?
Yes, we
empowerment.
can hear.
We didn't hear exact the question. Empowerment of, it wasn't clear acoustic wise. Could you please repeat it?
We lost the voice.
Hello? You have to unmute.
Hello?
Please repeat the question. Thank you.
Welcome. Okay, I was saying I have two concerns on me, which I would love to raise, and partly one of them I'm going to raise it as a man now, who is into the agenda of empowerment of women and protection of their rights. One is that we are talking about empowerment of grassroots women to engage into protection of women against all violence and the empowerment etc. But I have an experience, for example, of what I've seen during the COVID-19, that most organizations which are engaged into empowerment of women up to the grassroots level, you find there are those organizations which have actually grown to the capacity of being able to write grants and win funds and support. But during COVID, they could not really reach women who are in communities because there were lockdown on movements. So there was a crisis at some point.
Right.
So my concern is that, and this is because most times I've been involved into writing of proposals, and I know that the empowerment programs that have been put in place have at some point created an outcome where women have come together at a community level and formed groups and community-based organizations. But these community-based organizations have not been an opportunity on capacity building, so they can engage at a community level with their fellow women. So that you would need to see how they themselves can be involved. Hello?
Yeah.
You can hear me?
Correct. You are talking about the challenge that we Yeah, that's correct. We have a good experience in that because we faced this challenge. Access to movement one of the obstacles that we couldn't adapt at the beginning of COVID because of the blockage. And that's why we have changed our way of doing the business. Like we recruited mobilizers at the communities from the youth and the young women there working at the communities. They are now working with us. They educated the NGOs and the women there to use the technology. So we are more adapting Zoom, other virtual platforms, but with the help of the young women at those communities, because at each community you'll find some women who are educated who can help you, and this gives them also an income. So we are now happy that I'm always saying to the donors that we use the amount allocated when you do trainings, for example, or capacity buildings that are related to hospitality or transportation. Now it's allocated to be as a stipend for the young women who are working at the communities helping us. We have now a lot of volunteers working with small amounts that also help them to change their life and to change their socioeconomic conditions. They have now an opportunity, and they help us to reach those communities, to be able to see, to go to those young women, to educate them, to show them how to use those virtual platforms. So it's required because the life is changing. We are not going back to the life before COVID. So we should find those tools. And because of those tools, we are now able to adapt all the activities and to implement it. And I would like also the WPHF, because they also linked us with Dell Technology, and now we have an application. We want the application to have the pro bono consultation. They will help us to have that platform for the outreach to the communities. And thanks again for WPHF for their networking and opportunities. And we hope that we'll get it to have that platform to reach the communities and to enable the NGOs towards this digital transformation, so we can empower those young women and give them opportunities. This is our aim.
Interesting. Thanks, Amal. And I think I was interested. I had a second one, which I should be short.
I can't, sorry. We have one question which was before, and we have only 5 minutes left. So I'm very sorry if I would like to leave it with this first question. I hope I think it was well responded by Amal. Thank you, Royambia. And
thanks very much.
We actually are at the end, but I would like to give space for a last question, which is concerning COVID-19, which has shrink resources for the women's security agenda, as has become obvious also already. What are you doing to keep local women work in women peace security afloat is the question. And I would like to ask the panelists who want to answer this question, that have a specific answer, to come back to it. So I just asked them one by another if you want to come back to that. Julia, do you want to answer this question? Yeah, do you want me to repeat?
Yes, I did not get the last two words.
Okay, so basically, what are you doing to keep local women work in women peace security, continuing considering the shrinking resources, if this is an issue for you? Yeah.
Shrinking resources is always an issue, especially with COVID and with increased situations with conflict. So when both are, what we were doing, we were trying to create new women's group in societies and try to make inventarization of local resources, adding a little bit from us and giving women opportunities to implement something by their own in community that in situation of COVID, a resilience mechanism which goes through women can be more sustainable, but women need something to prove that they can do sustainable job. And for this, they need at least some small support that they will implement community projects. We think that it's very important to have local resilience plans. And with local resilience plans, even from 2-3 proposals, women can raise their reputation and their credibility in community to work on sustainable resilience mechanism.
Thank you, Yuria. Sorry, I was speaking without being mute. Very important points. And Amal, do you have anything to add or a different perspective? Amal, are you still there?
I would like also to stress on a point the importance of integrating the efforts, because it's always with the women organizations working. The efforts should be integrated and there should be a cross interaction. For example, women working with human rights should work with women with disabilities and others who are working with culture. With those joint efforts, we will be able to make a change. But if you are only just bringing funds without that sort of coordination and integration, we will not be able to do that change on our communities.
Thank you, Amal. Last but not least, again, Mercy, do you want to add anything on the points made?
Yeah, and because of time, I'm just mentioning it. Like we are trying to focus on interventions that do not really require financial and funding to continue, like working with TOTs, like women who have the capacity and have been engaged with us before. Then we make use of existing structures to continue our work. And in Kenya, I'll give examples of peace committees where we've been working very hard to ensure we have women represented. And lastly, engaging county government and policy makers so that we have allocations to work around women, peace and security. And one example, we did a strategic plan for a county gender working group so that they have they have budgetary allocations to address issues of gender and peace in their own county. And because they have a plan of action, they can even do fundraising and get allocations from the government itself. Thank you.
Christina, you're muted.
Thanks a lot for these examples. And I think they demonstrate again that it's not only about funds, but also about the flexibility and the activism and the energy of women who are finding solutions to make the work going on. But of course, it's also about funds, as we are aware, and we really hope that the situation will improve. I would like to finalize with this message and would like to come to a close of this discussion. And I would like to thank you very much for your interesting questions, and a special thanks to our panelists for sharing their important perspectives today. And before we end, I would like to now pass the mic to Gita Elchiari from the Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund to provide your closing remarks. I'll hand over to you, Rita.
Thank you very much, Christina. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody. Thanks you very much again for joining us today. It's really good to get to celebrate the 20th anniversary of 1325 or start the celebrations with you. and to take this opportunity to continue to move the Vienna Declaration and its full recommendations forward. So as you have heard today from the various speakers, the Vienna Declaration is really, and we really think that it is, a groundbreaking document that was produced by local women peace builders and responders in a very short amount of time. And at the Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund, together with the Austrian Corporation and the Global Network of Women Peace Builders, we are extremely proud to have been able to provide a space and facilitate the convening of these women to come up with a common agenda, with common requests and with common goals. I think also that this privilege comes with responsibility, and as the conveners of the Vienna Forum, we all, the three of us, have worked on amplifying the message that we heard in Vienna, and we all have also decided to take on and implement the recommendations already contained in the Vienna Declaration. So I would like to give you a few concrete examples from WPHF. As some of you know, we are a partnership between the United Nations member states and civil society. And we support local civil society organizations doing women, peace and security and humanitarian work. We have supported over 200 since 2016, which was the launch of the fund. The strategic priorities that we have defined at the Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund for the next 5 years are a direct, tangible, concrete response to the Vienna Declaration and its recommendations. So I'll just name a few. First, we will work on sustaining quality and flexible funding for civil society organizations, including through institutional funding for civil society, which we're able to start within the COVID-19 pandemic, but we are hoping to be able to sustain it after the COVID-19 pandemic if it ever ends. Second, the Women's Peace and Humanitarian Fund will strengthen its work on protecting women human rights defenders and women peace builders, and we will try to streamline it across all of our funding mechanisms. And this was a strong also recommendation from the Vienna Declaration. We will also strengthen our advocacy for women's organizations in the humanitarian world so that they are finally recognized as legitimate responders to humanitarian crisis, and so that women's organizations are not systematically deprioritized, as we have seen every time there is a crisis that hits, as we have seen recently with COVID-19, but also with other hot crises that have happened lately. Fourth, we will pilot a few projects on the linkages between climate and women, peace and security, as also was one of the elements of the Vienna Declaration, considering climate change, adaptation and mitigation as a tool for conflict prevention and sustaining peace in general, and increasing women's role in this kind of work. And finally, we will continue to work on promoting this agenda beyond the usual circles of 1325, and we'll try to grow, together with all of you, a global movement to support women peace builders and responders that will engage other types of stakeholders, including the private sector. Amal mentioned Dell. We want to grow those partnerships, but also with the general public, so the general public knows more about the great work that women peace builders and humanitarian responders do. This movement will be built around a new campaign that we're designing at the moment and that we will be launching in 2021. And I'm very proud to announce today. The campaign is called 1000 Women Leaders. It aims at supporting 1000 women leaders and their civil society organizations working on women, peace and security and humanitarian issues by the end of 2025, the 25th anniversary of 1325. And we would like to really focus on concrete and human stories of women peace builders and responders, such as the ones that we have just heard about today, and which were really great examples of what we would like to promote and continue to amplify. So Austria, GNWP, WPHF, we all have started implementing the Vienna Declaration and its recommendations, and we would like to strongly encourage others to join us and to listen to these powerful voices that were together in Vienna. 20 years after the adoption of 1325, the work of women peace builders and responders continues to be significantly under-recognized, significantly underfunded. OECD figures just recently showed again that only 0.2% of the funding that goes to fragile states goes to women's organizations. The UN Secretary General in his annual report this year on women, peace and security is calling on the international community to multiply this figure by 5 to reach 1% by 2030. And I really hope that we can now all roll up our sleeves and get to work. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Rita. And I think that have been very, well appreciated closing words. I want, in the name of the organizers, the Global Network of Women's Peacebuilders, the Women, Peace and Humanitarian Fund, and the Austrian Development Corporation, thank everyone for joining us today. I'm following the chat. It's really interesting, the discussions also going on there. Yeah, thank you very much for participating, yeah, have a nice day. And we are 6 minutes after time, so I think it was worth taking this time, and yeah, I hope you think so too. So bye bye to everybody, and thank you very much.